Now I'd like to help kick off the premiere of an exciting new comedy show, which you're all going to enjoy for a long, long time, starring Tom and Dick Smothers.
Well, was that it?
Yep, I like to hit 'em hard and get out quick.
Tommy, that's a stupid song. I never heard of it. I don't know where you got it, but it's stupid.
A man with an acoustic guitar stood in the middle of the national television stage. He sang a simple story about a captain leading his soldiers on a march, but hidden behind those lyrics was a message that caused a TV station to panic and decide to cut the entire segment. 10 years later, that same song would go down in the history books as one of the most daring protests ever to hit American airwaves. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. For 3 seasons, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour confronted censorship, government, and national television head-on. Starting from this scene, a series of underground events took place, much more intense. I've been reading up on the situation in Red China because everybody's following that, and so I thought I'd follow. That's right. The whole world's watching Red China, and they're watching to see what Chairman Maltitong's going to do over there. The show CBS wants to bury alive, Pete Seeger. On September 24th, 1967, during the second season of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, folk singer Pete Seeger made his first appearance on American television in more than a decade after being blacklisted for refusing to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. With his silver hair, familiar acoustic guitar, and calm face, Seeger performed the song Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. We were waist deep in the Big Muddy. The big fool said to push on. The story in the song tells the story of an Army officer who stubbornly leads his troops across a dangerous river, even with warnings, and eventually drowns. The lyrics sound like a military picnic. But anyone who followed the news at the time understood that the implication was aimed directly at the American leadership, who was bogged down in the Vietnam War. CBS ordered the entire performance cut from the broadcast, citing political sensitivity. But Tom Smothers reacted furiously. He argued that the song not only reflected the feelings of millions of Americans about the war, but also was a test of freedom of expression on television. In an interview with the New York Times in October 1967, Tom called the censorship decision cowardly and an example of unwarranted network control. Behind the scenes, the fight escalated. Tom and Dick Smothers demanded that CBS rerun the performance. They not only wrote internal letters, but also applied public pressure. Responses from viewers across the country poured into CBS headquarters. Letters, phone calls, even petitions demanding a rerun. Both sides realized that the incident had gone beyond a television show. Nearly 5 months later, on February 18, 1968, Seeger returned and sang Big Muddy in its entirety on national air. This time, CBS caved to public pressure. The segment was not edited, but the price was much higher. CBS began to place the show under intense scrutiny. In an internal recording released by historian David B. Cooley in 2023, censorship chief William Tankersley said, "We can't let this show become a pulpit for anti-war protesters." From a television perspective, this was a dangerous precedent. An artist who had been ostracized from the mainstream media system was re-emerging with a clear, unedited political message in prime time. Network executives saw this not as a single mistake, but as a dangerous long-term slide. George Sunga, the show's senior producer, revealed in a 2002 interview that CBS recorded every meeting between Tom Smothers and the censors after the event. During one tense meeting, Tom told a CBS representative, "If we can't say what we believe, there's no point in having this show." A dangerous precedent. Ironically, after performance aired, the show continued to have high ratings and positive reviews. Pete Seeger not only performed but became a symbol of renewed creative freedom on television. But for CBS, the incident marked the beginning of a period of strict control. Every script, every line of dialogue, every guest from that point on had to be reviewed line by line. Seeger himself later admitted that he had no idea that a folk song could cause such a backlash. But as Tom Smothers himself said in an internal meeting recorded by producer Ernest Chambers, television is a perception-shaping tool. If they're afraid of a song, it's doing its job. Draft destroyed. On September 15, 1968, the first episode of the third season of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour opened with a special guest, Harry Belafonte, a black artist known for civil rights activism and outspoken anti-war views. He performed Don't Stop the Carnival, a song with a lively melody that seemed to escape political overtones. But it was the way the show handled the visuals that CBS reacted to. During Belafonte's performance, the producers intercut documentary footage of the August 1968 crackdown on protesters at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The violence was clear: police beating protesters, tear gassing, and arbitrary arrests. The images were unblurred, uncut, and accompanied by a cheerful soundtrack that added a sense of cruel satire. CBS orders cut. The reaction from CBS came at an internal preview. Executives immediately ordered the entire segment cut. Tom Smothers objected vehemently, insisting that putting the truth on television was not a disruptive act but a moral duty. But CBS would not budge. According to a September 20th, 1968 article in the Washington Post, the network issued an internal memo that the segment could damage the image of the entire network. At a press conference 3 days later, Tom Smothers told reporters, "We didn't add anything to the truth. We just didn't take it away." At the same time, hundreds of letters of protest were sent to CBS from viewers across the country, many of them from American veterans and college students, demanded that the segment be rebroadcast. What was most outrageous was not the removal itself, but what followed. In a 2022 interview with PBS, executive producer Ken Fritz confirmed that the original footage of the segment was intentionally destroyed by CBS rather than simply archived or held in reserve. The goal, he said, was to ensure it would never be replayed, leaked, or used as evidence. It was one of the few instances in American television history where a segment was completely destroyed due to political considerations. Nonetheless, a rough copy of the footage was kept in a personal archive by Tom Smothers. In 2021, the footage was discovered during the preparation of the PBS documentary, The Smothers Brothers Comedy in Conflict. When the documentary aired in November 2022, the original footage was shown to the public for the first time. The backlash was immediate. On social media, many modern viewers could not believe that such a clearly social commentary was ever considered too extreme to air. In the same documentary, media historian Allison Pullman notes the destruction of the tape by CBS demonstrates the extent to which they were afraid of a comedy that dared to show reality. They did not want audiences to face the truth, even if it was delivered through a funny song. She also notes that this event can be seen as the culmination of the battle between television censorship and television artists who wanted to use their voices responsibly. Curse of Elaine May's censorship. On November 10, 1968, during the 7th episode of Season 3, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour taped a special written and performed by comedian Elaine May. The segment had nothing to do with war protests or street violence. It was directed at CBS, and it never aired. Elaine May plays a television censor who stands before the camera solemnly reading from a memo listing all the things that are not allowed to be said on national television: war, religion, race, injustice, police, capitalism, and even the mention of the word censorship. The list gets longer and longer as she reads. The pace of the skit becomes more and more frantic. At the end, May's character drops a sheet of paper, looks straight at the audience, and says, "If we're not allowed to say anything important, we're just fooling you with empty jokes." Then she rips up the entire script and leaves the stage in silence. Tom Smothers proposed airing the skit in its entirety, unedited. CBS immediately rejected it. In a meeting with programming director Mike Dan, Tom asked for a reason for the cut. The answer: it offends the system. As producer Ernest Chambers revealed in a 2023 article in the Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, CBS rejected the skit not because of its specific political content, but because it openly exposed the censorship mechanism they themselves operated. Elaine May never appeared on the show again. Tom Smothers threatened to resign if CBS continued to cut content with strong opinions. In a meeting that was later recorded and released, Tom told CBS executives, "Comedy is not designed to put people to sleep. It may make people laugh, but if they don't think about it afterwards, we've failed." After the scrapped segment, CBS implemented an even stricter script-checking process. Every line of dialogue, every musical number, every scene had to be approved days before filming. Remarkably, Elaine May's skit was not destroyed. A rough recording survives. preserved by her in her personal archive. In 2022, the recording was restored by PBS and included in a documentary about the show. It was the first time audiences had heard the entire performance. Historian David Bentley, who interviewed Elaine May in the 1980s, notes in the documentary the skit was more than just a joke. It was a forewarning, a precise representation of what happened next. The show was stifled from the inside out, monologue deleted. On the evening of February 9, 1969, in episode 19 of Season 3, Tom Smothers took the stage alone to deliver a short monologue just before the next comedy segment. But this time, there was no joke. He looked into the camera and said, "We're spending billions of dollars to bomb a country whose people just want to live in peace. Does anyone else think that's ridiculous?" The line wasn't part of the pre-submitted script. It was added just before filming, and the studio audience heard it in full. CBS didn't let it get out. In the final broadcast, the monologue was cut entirely, replaced by a commercial. The reason given was that the content was not suitable for the entertainment format. But the interference didn't stop with the edits. 3 days later, Tom Smothers was summoned to the office of CBS chairman William Paley. According to his memoir, Dangerously Funny, Paley told him bluntly, "You're turning this program into a propaganda newspaper. Stop it or we'll cancel it." Tom replied, "If telling the truth is propaganda, I'd rather be propaganda than be silent." Meanwhile, the reaction from viewers was swift. Many who were present at the taping sent letters to CBS wondering why the speech had been cut from the broadcast. One of the letters, quoted in the Los Angeles Times on February 15, 1969, read, "Why cut out such a simple and reasonable idea? Television is a place where the public should be able to hear a full range of opinions, even if they disagree." What Tom Smothers didn't know at the time was that CBS had been compiling an internal censorship dossier on him since late 1968. In a December 2023 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, historian Catherine Kramer Brownell revealed that CBS was compiling every controversial statement, action, and situation Tom had made in preparation for a legal and media action justifying his termination. The dossier included a note from censorship chief William Tankersley. Tom Smothers is a threat to the stability of the network. The monologue incident was not only a flashpoint between Tom and CBS, but also created internal tension with Dick Smothers. According to producer Ernest Chambers, Dick said in a private meeting, "I support Tom, but the show is drifting away from its original purpose. We need to know the boundaries in public." Nevertheless, the brothers remained absolutely united. CBS canceled the show in April 1969. CBS made it official. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was canceled. The reason given was administratively simple. The show had failed to submit its approved episodes on time, violating the terms of its contract. But what was going on behind the scenes was far more complex and political. Documents from the later release of the Smothers Brothers v. CBS lawsuit showed that the Smothers Brothers had submitted tapes on time multiple times. But CBS deliberately delayed approval of the content to create administrative reasons for canceling the show. Tom Smothers provided evidence of tape delivery records and unusually long approval times. Notably, at the time the show was still among the top 10 most watched shows in the country. The real reason for CBS's decision, nonetheless, was not technical. In 2024 at a conference at UCLA, media historian Robert Thompson released a recently declassified set of internal documents from the Library of Congress. Among them was a letter dated February 6, 1969, from H.R. Haldeman, a senior advisor to President Richard Nixon, to William Paley, the president of CBS. The letter asked CBS to strictly control anti-war and divisive messages on the air. Below, a handwritten note read, "The Smothers Brothers are out of control." Also included in the documents are transcripts of calls between White House officials that refer to the show as a potential threat to control of mass media. What the government cannot censor directly, it exerts indirect pressure through sponsors, advertising boards, and high-level relationships with network owners. CBS did not dispute the authenticity of the documents. In a brief statement after the conference, the network said only the decision to cancel the show was based on a number of complex factors at the time. This adds to the suspicion that the cancellation was not due to content alone, but rather the result of a coordinated campaign by television executives and the political class bent on controlling public opinion. Tom and Dick Smothers decided to sue CBS for violating their freedom of expression and unilaterally terminating their contract without due process. The case dragged on until 1975, when the Smothers won the case and were awarded $776,300. But according to Tom himself, this was not a real victory. "We won legally, but we lost culturally," he said at a press conference after the trial. They sent a message that telling the truth is not welcome on television. Since 1969, no entertainment program on national television has been as openly confrontational with the political system as the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Anything that might spark controversy was banned or censored. The effect of the cancellation lasted for years, as producers and writers learned the lines. No politics, no war, no television. The Survivor segments. Not all socially conscious pieces were completely cut from the airwaves. Some were played but only once, then removed from all official recordings or heavily edited in later releases. These pieces did not disappear like Belafonte's performance, but they were muffled enough to have no widespread impact. On December 8, 1968, actress Lee French appeared in a short sketch depicting a black man being questioned by police on the street. When he tried to explain that he was on his way home from work, he was pushed against a wall, interrogated, and ended with the words, "I don't know if it's illegal to go home." The segment was presented as a black comedy with no background laughter. CBS allowed it to air, but only once. When the show was re-released on tape in the 1990s, the segment was no longer featured. Tom Smothers, in a 1968 interview with Time, confirmed that the network had asked that the scene not be included in any subsequent official recordings. The reason was not the content, but the social context had changed. Another case is Joan Baez, scheduled to appear on the March 1969 episode to sing an anti-war song. CBS asked her to change it to a neutral song. When Tom Smothers refused to change, the network canceled the segment with Baez. According to producer Ken Fritz, Baez later sent Tom a thank you note, which included, "You chose truth over safety." Additionally, several other socially themed segments were quietly altered. Dialogue was edited, lyrics were cut, or background laughter was added to lighten the tension. These changes were not announced to the public and were only discovered years later, when historians compared the surviving rough draft with the final release. Even if they are not destroyed or censored outright, these segments suffer the same fate. Their influence is limited, becoming a dangerous part of the television archive, and this silent suppression makes them harder to detect than anything that is explicitly banned. From an artistic perspective, in several interviews since the show's cancellation, Tom has emphasized that he never viewed comedy as escapism. "We're not news," he said, "but if people laugh and don't think about it, then we've wasted their time." This philosophy not only informs the content of each episode, but also informs every decision he makes, from leaving controversial statements untouched to protecting guests with social messages. In his memoir, Dangerously Funny, Tom recounts that he was often asked why he didn't make his show more lighthearted. His answer was always consistent: because reality is hard. He saw television as a place where the public could have a conversation, even if that conversation was uncomfortable or offensive. For him, comedy only had value if it dared to address something that society tried to ignore. The show's influence didn't stop in the 1960s. The producers of Saturday Night Live, The Daily Show, and Last Week Tonight have all acknowledged that they learned from the Smothers Brothers that comedy could be a political response, not just entertainment. Tom Smothers laid the foundation for how modern television comedy approaches social issues, not by ducking, but by taking a clear stand. Thank you for sticking around. What was once forbidden, hidden, or thought forgotten is now being seen with clearer eyes. If you think these scenes are worth revisiting, if you believe that television should not only entertain, but also remind us of the things that were once suppressed, leave a comment below. What do you think would happen if this show were aired today? Don't forget to like if you think this content needs to be shared more widely. Subscribe so you don't miss out on other stories that have been hidden. And if you know someone who needs to see this scene again, share the video with them. Because sometimes All it takes is one rewatch, and nothing will ever be the same again.